dead. Oh, sweet, merciful horns of the devil! Exes and Oohs is such a breath of fresh air compared to the last episode. I mean, seeing stars wasn't a complete train wreck or anything, but it did derail the train a bit. Sending it careening off a cliff, crashing into a forest, and killing several endangered species, but hey, it could have been worse. Yeah, my main problem is that seeing stars basically force-fed us a bunch of farm-fresh ideas before they had the time to ripen, and then subsequently salted those plots so nothing could ever grow there again. Ergo, you blew your emotional loads way too early, guys. We could have had full-fledged episodes about Luna and Octi on a goth girl's day out, Blitz first returning to the stage after so many years, Blitz and Luna having a sweet bonding episode with a flashback as the emotional climax. But because all those ideas were smooshed together into one misshapen mass, that can't happen anymore. But luckily, the third entry in Season 2 is much more of a straight shooter, with a well-paced, easy-to-follow story, emotional reveals that perfectly land, and plenty of the on-brand chaos and vulgarity that the franchise wears like a badge. And despite some shortcomings from last time, this story brought me back into my ecstatic, HB-loving state once again. Just when I thought I was out, they reel me back in. You try anything funny and I'll put this cigar out on your dick. But terrible jokes aside, does this episode deserve the big fat X? Or will I be left saying, oh? Well, I didn't just make that noise for nothing, so we're about to find out. If you have any thoughts on the latest IMP escapade, be sure to leave a comment below. And if you want to see me review every other Helluva Boss episode, there's a handy playlist link in the description that is just itching to be clicked on. Let's show this fresh meat how our family does business around here. Besides that, it's time for Helluva Boss Season 2, Episode 3, Exes and Oohs. Oh my god! Bang, 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 bang! The episode starts off with,
I am not fat.
Hey, can I employ your services real quick? Great. Here's your target, here's the money, just take care of it right now. Thank you. Whew, so anyway, the episode starts off with Millie having a GameStop return policy level rage fit where she tears apart the entire office and reveals her tendency to immediately go for the cheap shot. Yeah, apparently she ran into an ex on her walk to work and they did not seem to end their relationship on a good note. Lesson learned, boys, if you ever date a woman from the Wrath Ring and you screw her over, she'll make sure you never screw again. Don't play it again! Ugh. So Blitz gets a phone call from a new client who states that their presence is required at his personal estate. I also really like this subtle line here where Blitz says that killing demons isn't exactly their business no more, implying that they probably started off as a run-of-the-mill murder business before grabbing Stolas' book to have more of a standout gimmick. It's a really nice touch, and I hope we get to see an episode where IMP first got started. A personal chopper flies the main trio over to the Green Ring, and aside from the obvious Lululand cameo, we get some sweeping shots of what this place is actually like. And the only way to describe it is a lot of Mammon and a lot of Mafia. Now, we don't know too much about Mammon at this point in time. Aside from the fact that he's the Prince of Greed, he owns Mammon Inc., which has the rights to Fizzarali, and he even has his own bank called Moneymakers, as shown in Ozzy's. However, it hasn't been confirmed that he completely rules over the Greed Ring, in the same way that Lucifer rules over Pride. In fact, if we're only judging things by the images shown during this flyover, particularly this one where a bunch of Mafia goons are carrying away sacks of what I assume are stolen banknotes from Mammon's bank, it's possible that the Mafia and Mammon are both in constant conflict over who will reign supreme over greed. You could just say that the Mafia and Mammon are on the same team and these guys are simply transporting bags of Mammon merch and or money, but I don't know, the fact that they're hauling these burlap sacks into an abandoned warehouse in a very secretive manner doesn't give me the vibe that they work for the guy. Plus it would just make thematic sense for two equally powerful sides to always be lusting after what the other half possesses. Like the entire culture surrounding greed is one big petty squabble between two sides that constantly want what they can't have. If this does end up being true, I'd honestly vote for Mammon's side to come out on top. If for no other reason than because the Mafia keeps dumping their toxic sludge in the harbor. Like, what the heck, you jerks? What do you think this is, the Detroit River?
He poisoned our water supply!
So the IMPs finally arrive at the house of this mystery client, and it's here where we're introduced to Moxxie's father Crimson and Eminem's egocentric ex, Chazwick Thurman. Two characters that absolutely elevate this episode to a whole new level. and I'm gonna break down why. Starting with Chaz, I just gotta say it is so refreshing to see a sexually charged, full of himself side character who is just a complete and total loser. I mean, Verasik and Stryker really are all that in a bag of chips, so when they boast, they can absolutely back it up. But this dude would be lucky to scrape the crumbs off the bottom of the bag. If he was on a menu, he'd be fishing nothing. He constantly tries to build himself up as this luscious, irresistible god of the bed, who can charm the pants off any creature that walks his way. He even tries to seduce Moxxie with this sensual love jam while they're in the room together. But because he's got all the Casanova energy of fat bastard after a Chili's binge, he makes really awkward innuendos, he flubs his lines, and he attempts to do a striptease which only annoys and hurts Moxxie more than anything. And it's absolutely hilarious. In fact, when I heard that they got local funny man and parody artist Eric Schwartz to voice him, I thought he actually had a hand in writing this song. But nope, all he did was perform it, and he does a flawless job. With all that said though, while Chaz is not exactly hot stuff, I could still understand why Moxxie would fall head over heels for him at first. The guy was basically raised in an environment of abuse, lovelessness, and external isolation for multiple years up to their first meeting, so it makes sense that the first person to give him the come hither eyes would absolutely cause some sort of spark. He has yet to witness the true love and raw bedsheet passion that someone like Millie brings to the table, so to him, a subpar partner like Chaz would absolutely seem like the best thing ever when viewed through his limited lens. If you've never had a juicy, freshly made whole beef burger and just eat fast food for the rest of your life, that's gonna be your only frame of reference. So you're just gonna assume that nothing else could possibly be better. But after a moment of bitter betrayal and a chance to taste the true prime rib of partnership, there's no reason for Mox to go back to Arby's anymore, so he kicks the sucker out, and Millie follows suit. In the end, the only person who's willing to bang old Shark Week is Blitz, who quickly identifies that something is up due to Chaz's poor performance in bed. And this makes for what is possibly the most unintentionally funny thing in the entirety of Helluva Boss. Hear me out. There's a scene at the beginning where Millie punches over a filing cabinet which has Blitz's suggestive photos in it, and when they question him about it, he calls it his research. Obviously, this is just meant to be a cover-up for Blitz's personal pleasure material, but the fact that he later on uses his extensive sexual knowledge to detect something strange about old fish lips means that this collection of various positions and kinks did clue him into certain things about the current mystery, meaning this file cabinet of nudie pics could technically qualify as research. I'm probably reading way too deep into this, but that's pretty hilarious when you think about it. Speaking of Blitz's little mystery, he eventually goes out to Chaz's car to investigate, and surprise, surprise, turns out he's a big fat phony liar who merely wanted to marry into Moxxie's family just to reap the rewards. I'll admit, when I first saw Mammon's logo inside of this dude's pants, I thought maybe he was hired so that Mammon could have an in with the head of the Mafia and dismantle it from the inside, turning the tide of the M versus M conflict in his favor. But nope, Chaz just rented the suit from one of Mammon's businesses, so he's just a nobody who desperately wanted to dig himself out of the hole of poverty. Oh well, at least he doesn't have to worry about being broke anymore, cause thanks to IMP's investigation, Chaz has officially become the latest addition to Crimson's backstabber-laced home decor. Rest in peace, Chaz. You will be missed. By someone, I'm sure.
I use traitors in all of my decorating.
And speaking of Crimson, let's talk about the big daddy of this operation. Crimson is hands down the scariest and most dangerous antagonist we've seen in the show so far. While most HB baddies range from threatening but still charming, to all-powerful but still tongue-in-cheek, to just straight up pathetic, there is absolutely nothing goofy or likable about this guy whatsoever. I guess he's funny in a meta sense, since his conversations with Moxxie are literally just Richard Horvitz arguing with himself.
No, Master, not this thing. I hate you. I hate you too.
But in this episode alone, he is ruthless, sexist, manipulative, abusive, willing to kill anyone that messes with his predetermined plans, including family, and need I repeat, decorates his home wall to wall with the dismembered body parts of any backstabbers. All with an emotionless business-first type mindset, a cold, calculated demeanor, and a seemingly endless team of muscle at his disposal. Despite his short stature and low rung on the social ladder, this is a dangerous demon, which only makes Moxxie's eventual triumph over him all the more satisfying. I'm sure there are a bunch of people who think the whole Moxxie standing up for himself plot is just getting repetitive at this point, but in my opinion, this batch of episodes shows a perfect sense of escalation, with Moxxie standing up to his boss, then standing up to his in-laws, then standing up to a literal prince of the underworld, then standing up to his father, the root cause of his lack of confidence in the first place. They're not recycling, they're building, showing Moxxie obliterating every confidence-based obstacle in his way until all his scaredy-cat tendencies he used to have are just a thing of the past. Honestly, all we need now is Moxxie standing up to Lucifer for his oppressive class system, and I'll finally be done with Moxxie Confidence Bingo! And just like always, Richard Horvitz absolutely nails his performance, showing that Moxxie can be just as cold and stern as his father when all the chips are down. You think you're some kind of high and mighty symbol of authority, don't ya? Walking around with your literal loan sharks in suits like this is frickin' Toontown? Well, my patience, much like your stature, is running short. So why don't you just mosey on out of my business before we make this a shotgun wedding? Okay, it didn't play out like that, but you get the idea. Honestly, when I examine Crimson up close, I'm kinda surprised that Moxxie came into the world at all. I mean, what kind of woman would want to share a bed with a guy like— Whoa! That's Moxxie's mom? Okay, I am just gonna let this out right now. That right there is a mother I would love to firmly shake the hand of, because it's clear that she's a sweet and hardworking woman who puts her all into raising Moxxie to be a kind and upstanding young man. Yep, honestly, I have nothing but endless praise for someone who's able to raise their kid to be a kind and caring soul in a family full of greedy, sin-ridden monsters with this piece of waste as her other half. She was the one shining beacon of morality in a sea of malcontent and deviousness, and she was so unwilling to conform to her husband's methods of child raising that she would eventually wind up at the bottom of that very same sea with the rest of Crimson's victims. I honestly don't believe that Crimson forced Moxxie to be the one to push her over, as there's plenty of evidence against that idea, but the fact that her shoe is still so pristine compared to the other objects at the top of the water might imply that her disappearance occurred very recently, meaning Crimson didn't even give child Moxxie a grieving period and just immediately shoved him into the role of the soon-to-be heir of the Mafia. Jeez, the more and more I read into this guy, the worse and worse he gets. But if I can give Crimson credit for one thing aside from his impeccable taste in women, it's that his behavior works as a perfect comparison piece to one of my favorite character dynamics in the show. In my eyes, Crimson is not Moxxie's dad. His dad has and always will be Blitz. And I don't mean that in some kind of game theory, unmasked conspiracy kind of way, but I do mean it in every other way. An effective parent needs to bring three things to the table. They need to teach, they need to support, and they need to provide. And if we look at both Crimson and Blitz's behavior with Moxxie throughout the series, despite surface level similarities, the difference is night and day. Crimson in general is an authority figure that physically and verbally abuses Moxxie on the regular, mocks him for his sexual preferences, and gives him a job in the killing business. But all of that was solely done to further fuel his fragile fear-mongering reputation. To him, Moxxie is meaningless as a person. He's a lump of clay to be molded into an heir at best, or an asset for greater business ventures at worst. He constantly abuses Moxxie to further cement his status as the most feared imp in the Greed Ring, and maybe all of hell itself. Like I said before, imps are only one tier below the complete bottom of Hell's social hierarchy, so Crimson probably feels the need to overcompensate as much as possible, ensuring that everyone alive fears him and everyone who doesn't is dead. And Moxxie is either going to carry that reputation forward or be cut off and cut out after he served his purpose. He takes absolutely zero interest in understanding Moxxie's unique sexual preference and basically just lumps any non-straight sexualities together into one big group that are simply after gratuitous pleasure and nothing else. Which, depending on who you ask, can actually be seen as kinda accurate for some families. And he only gave Moxxie a spot in the family business for the reasons I already listed above. Moxxie is a means to an end to Crimson. Nothing more, nothing less. Meanwhile, you've got Blitz, another authority figure who physically and verbally abuses Moxxie on the regular, mocks him for his sexual preferences, and gives him a job in the killing business. But this time with actual love and good intentions placed behind it. Like I've said in my previous videos, Blitz's abuse of Moxxie comes from a place of respect and admiration. He knows that Moxxie is incredibly skilled and talented, and if he could only overcome those self-confidence barriers of his, he can truly blossom into an incredible imp. So what does Blitz do? He hurls the most over-the-top screaming insults and ridiculous physical violence towards Moxxie in an effort to give him the thickest skin possible. He acts like the most obnoxious, toxic person in the underworld, with the mindset that if Moxxie can stand up to him, he can stand up to anyone. He didn't abuse Moxxie to keep him in line, he did it to fortify him. And you can't argue with the results. Meanwhile, he is also known to throw the occasional snide remark at the things Moxxie enjoys in the bedroom, but it never comes from a place of malice or disrespect. It's kind of like a playful, shoulder nudge kind of remark. From all angles, Blitz is 100% supportive and understanding of Moxxie's sexuality and has no problems with him exploring it to his heart's content. Sure, he does have his side motives, but unlike Crimson, he is totally on Moxxie's side when it comes to these kinds of things. As for giving him a job at IMP, while you could say that he just hired Moxxie because of his proven skills with a gun during that prison escape, I also like to think he gave Moxxie a job because he knows what it's like to live a destitute life and scrounge up what you can to survive. They're both guys in very unfortunate situations, so the best they could do is just help each other out, like they did on the day they escaped. Crimson's job for Moxxie was purely utilitarian, but I definitely get the vibe that Blitz's offer had much more heart behind it. It's honestly incredible how much your views on a picture can change when you listen to the artist's intention behind it, for better or for worse. Blitz and Crimson may seem similar on the surface, but deep down, it couldn't be any more different. Crimson may be Moxxie's father, but in my eyes, Blitz will always be his dad. Anyway, speaking of Blitz, Millie pops him from Chaz's trunk and they work together to crash the wedding.
Buckle up, Millie. We're doing a Shrek.
What the fuck, Shrek? What? I genuinely wasn't expecting you to bring up Shrek.
Yeah, apparently Shrek is canon in this universe. Thanks, Viv. Now I gotta picture Blitz having an awakening while watching Shrek 2.
Who are you calling donkey?
Ooh, that's kinda hot.
And then we burst straight into this episode's action scene. A full-on Millie-led slaughter of Crimson's entire gang. And it is glorious. We have yet to see a full-fledged fight where Millie is balls to the wall angry. We've had isolated scenes in episodes like Harvest Moon and Spring Broken, sure. Heck, even that fight during Truth Seekers didn't portray her as mad. If anything, she was as perky and happy as she usually is. But here, she is absolutely furious. And we get to see all her red-hot rage erupt in one fantastic scene. Every single kill is unique, with Millie's savage brain working a mile a minute to assemble this Rube Goldberg machine of murder, with so many over-the-top set pieces. Like, geez, Millie, did you have to rip out this guy's entire skeleton? Deboning him like a Red Lobster lunch special?
It's the Wonder Boner.
Also, you gotta love that the priest just flips everybody off and walks away. By the power invested in me by our overlord Lucifer, I now pronounce you not worth my time. Peace out. The only issue I have isn't necessarily the episode's fault and more or less just a trend that it highlighted about the series so far. In a world where shows need to have a good balance of build-up and payoff to keep people engaged, I feel like Helluva Boss is leaning a bit too far towards build-up. I mean, how many loose plot threads have they established so far? We've got the Cherubs, Stryker, the Dork Agents, Ozzy and Fizz, Blitz and Stolas' relationship status, and now we potentially have Moxxie's family wanting to hunt down IMP too. I know that there have been animatics suggesting that some of these plot points are going to be explored in future episodes, but the more lingering developments they pile onto the series, the more worried I am that they won't be able to give us satisfying payoffs for all of them. Heck, sometimes I get nervous that some of these developments might be completely ignored altogether. I'm still going to keep my optimism up for Vivzie and the team, but if you want my recommendation, I say it's better to pay the piper sooner than later, lest you end up with too many things to resolve and need to rush through most of them, and we definitely wouldn't want that. Overall, Exes and Oohs is another hit for Spindlehorse Studios. It's got refreshing and well-executed dark undertones, very dialogue-heavy scenes which are reminiscent of the Mafia movies it pulls from, some top-notch comedy with Chaz's shenanigans, and a great continuation of Moxxie's self-confidence arc, on top of some excellent backstory reveals, from his mom sleeping with the fishes to him sleeping with the fishes. It's yet another episode that combines every aspect that makes Helluva Boss enjoyable and blends them together seamlessly instead of just smushing them together without much thought or care. As far as where it would rank on the tier list, I gotta stand my ground and say that Truth Seekers and Ozzy's are still the peak of the series for me, but only by a slim margin this time. This episode came dangerously close to dethroning these guys as one of my top 2 favorites, but I ultimately turned it down, since I think that Ozzy's and Truth Seekers allow for much greater rewatch value with their fantastic climaxes and excellent musical numbers. Plus they have a little more emotional backbone to their reveals, which definitely helps out a lot. So ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the newest dawn of the S tier family. This is hands down, no contest, the best episode of Season 2 so far, and it does give me a lot more confidence with the series going forward, as long as they start following through on their promises. You can only build up interest for so long before you gotta start paying up. But overall, what do you guys think? Did you find this Greed Ring Rumble to be all tops, or does this episode bring disgrace to the HB name? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I hope to see you all real soon.